This is the Outpost RBA podcast, where we lead security teams to higher ground and new perspectives needed to secure the frontiers of enterprise, with hosts Will Robus and Stuart McIntosh.
Welcome to the Outpost Security RBA podcast. My name is Will Robus, and I'm here with my co-host and co-founder, Stuart McIntosh. Stuart, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
We are recording this episode first and foremost on a kind of a video first format. It's a new year, so we're kind of doing a new format experiment. Hopefully you like it and it turns out well. But we are recording this 2 or 3 days into the new year. Our topic of today is kind of focused on a little bit of recap of 2023 from a security perspective, and then kind of looking forward to 2024 and talking about some things that we think could be pretty big difference makers. So we're excited to dive into that. As always, we'll cover a couple of housekeeping things to start out. The RBA community is something we always like to highlight. The web presence for that is rba.community. We've just recently posted all of our kind of monthly events for 2024. So you can go to the website, look at those dates, at least get them marked on your calendar. Conveniently, you can sign up once for all the events instead of signing up for 12 things individually. So at least we figured that out from an efficiency standpoint.
Getting better.
So the monthly meetup are really just kind of a way to connect to the community. We like to highlight some practitioners. I've had a couple of essentially like in-house small customer developers with some of their apps for solutions. And then we like to push out other events kind of through that platform. A couple of deep tech workshops we did last year. Hopefully we can continue that. But yeah, it's just a really great way to connect with other defensive security practitioners, security threat detection engineers, things like that. And then we have our online presence is our Slack community, which is part of that kind of RBA community activity. So there's a link to that on our website as well as on the RBA community website. So also check that out. Bring your questions, bring your kind of challenges or your hurdles, and there's a wealth of experts that are hanging out in there and are usually pretty quick to respond. So make your security initiatives a success in 2024 and lean on the people that have been there before.
And the other thing on that too, Will, always looking for new ideas for content as well. So as you join and have conversations, it's one of the few areas that I've actually seen people respond to feedback. Like, hey, it'd be great if we talk more about process instead of just detections, or how do you handle this type of situation? And so, yeah, it's absolutely one that's kind of out there, help shape it, help influence it, and be a part of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's fluid by design because challenges are ever evolving. So come and challenge the people that are in there for sure. Second little call out is we have been posting some detailed show notes to our website to accompany all the podcasts. I think this is episode 17. So we're excited to keep this going in 2024 and have really enjoyed not only just having our conversations, but trying to talk about topics that are a little more of the intersection of execution, operation, and technical, because we think it's the difference maker. And actually, we'll probably get into that a little bit more today. All right. So with that, let's jump into today's topic. Looking at 2023 and 2024.
Like everyone else.
Yeah, it's maybe the obligatory New Year episode, but hopefully we have a little bit of a different approach, and maybe even what we think could be a contrarian kind of take on where we see things going in 2024. I mean, overall, it's 2023 was another year of kind of continued uncertainty. Probably less messy and less unpredictable than the kind of in the years past, given COVID ramp up and COVID ramp down. But
you're measuring normalcy against outliers. So yes, it was within the threshold of normal.
But yeah, I mean, from a kind of an economic standpoint, we saw kind of fairly significant layoffs come from some larger companies. Some of them are, I think, efficiency driven and company driven. Some of them were M&A driven. As we see a lot of consolidations, not only in cybersecurity, but across other industries. So, it was, again, less unpredictable, but still quite a bit of upheaval. And I think a lot of that uncertainty is coming into 2024. And of course, we've got a presidential election year, which
it's known for making things rock solid and stable, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's statistically, people are I would say subconsciously uncertain, whether whoever's the president affects you directly or indirectly. So it's an overarching kind of fog of uncertainty that we're gonna enjoy for most of 2024.
And I think interest rate changes are something that hit people close to home too. New cars, homes, loans, anything like that. And so I think that level of uncertainty folds in as well. What's going to happen with the Fed and an election here? And we're just trying to make money, stay open.
So cybersecurity in 2023. Now, we personally are against FUD and sounding the alarms and things like that. But what we did want to do to kind of set the stage is talk about a few of the kind of the more notable and significant cyber breaches over this past year, and just kind of try to pull some themes and some observations from those, and almost use them as like a little bit of a guiding impetus as we what we see and what we feel is coming next. Stuart, sorry.
And by no means is this the authoritative list or the top 10 in size or significance. These are just the ones that we had conversations with customers around and people around us in the industry. And why did these stand out as kind of bookmarks for what happened last year?
So I think the most publicized and the most relatable maybe breach of 2023 was, of course, in Las Vegas with MGM and the casino properties. And it probably was most significant because a lot of people have been to Las Vegas. They understand, how complicated and just the gambling machines alone and the operations of a casino floor relies a lot on technology, relies a lot on smooth operation to serve all those thousands of people that come through there every day.
Even checking someone in or out of their hotel room, right? Like when that switches to paper, it is a completely different ball game. So we definitely learned about the reliance of computers inside even a resort and casino.
And I think the article that I read, just in casino floor revenue alone over that, what was it, 3 to 5 days of outage? I can't remember how long exactly it lasted.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
I think they estimated 80 million in just casino floor revenue that they lost. So massively disruptive from a guest and hospitality standpoint, but also extremely expensive from a revenue and cost standpoint.
And I think what's interesting about this one is they took secure. I mean, the thing about this is casinos are known for taking security seriously, whether it's on the floor, whether it's the transference of money, whether it's guests. there was no different with their computers, right? Like they paid for technology, they paid people to implement it. So how did someone get in? This one, they thought they were good with multi-factor, and it was linked back to Okta being abused. Literally, the tool they put in to help prevent unauthorized access was used against them. And I think this was in a series of social engineering attacks we saw happen, a series of multi-factor authentication being abused. So that by no means were they the only ones where this vector worked, but I think it's just one of the like ones that comes to mind as a memorable breach of the year.
Yeah, and they ended up paying a pretty significant ransom. Is that? I remember at the time it kind of went back and forth between if they paid it or not and how much and things like that. But
the laws continue to change and shift around whether or not it's legal to pay. And so more and more people are not discussing how a situation was resolved. Because if they kicked out, if they actually recovered without paying, they don't want to tell the attackers that. And if they got out of it by paying, they don't want the SEC, the FCC, or any of these entities knowing, or even like, I'm wondering what these conversations with their cyber liability insurance companies is like. Like, hey, what's our premium going to look like? Because now that's a requirement with so many audits and regulatory bodies. So there's a lot of these conversations that we can only imagine, but we really don't know what they were, and not for years.
So actually, that's really interesting. You brought up that. So Splunk releases kind of a periodic CISO report, they call it, but it's a survey of 350 CISOs and kind of security C-suite people all over the globe. And they just published this, I think, I would say about a month ago. But they said 96% of the respondents suffered a ransomware attack. And out of those 96%, 83% said they paid the ransom. So definitely.
It's on the table, right? It's definitely on the table because this threatening has gotten, I mean, here, you even saw the losses on the casino floor. At what point is it worth just relief at any cost? And I think that's right. You start having your options limited, and you start quickly figuring out that risk reward, and
yeah. And back to your, I mean, here they said who paid the ransom, and only about a third of the time the cyber insurance actually paid it out. So the rest were the company or kind of a third party that was probably contracted between the two of them. So, however, there's a little bit of a bright light, and that is 11% said that they didn't pay the ransom and addressed it through standard incident response procedures.
This is great.
So that's pretty significant compared to pretty much anything else. So we'll post the link to the Splunk report so you can take a deep dive in it. But it's where individual cases kind of hit the light of day based on what's in the news, and then of course, like, we can get maybe incomplete information when it's happening about how it's resolved and what happened. Here we've got a sort of confidential set of respondents that say, hey, this is everybody, and it's costing us some pretty serious money. So again, that's kind of a common occurrence, and these attackers use all varieties of kind of combinations of things to get that credential access, and then compromise these systems, kind of regardless of what controls and prevention you have in place. It's kind of the next the next
next
breach
one
that caught your eye from a notability standpoint?
Yeah, the next one I put on the list here is that Move It vulnerability. If I remember right, it's like backup software, like syncing files and folders. It's kind of like a OneDrive, Dropbox. But I didn't realize, I had never heard of the company, and I didn't realize that thousands of people use them. And specifically, there's like a certain group, like call it 1,000 to 10,000 employee companies, that kind of medium-sized business. This is pretty prevalent in their environments. And so a ransomware group took advantage of this vulnerability, Clop ransomware, and just hammered it everywhere. And so this was another one where the reason I pulled this out is we got hit by SolarWinds, we got hit by Kaseya, and now Move It. What we're starting to see is attackers are figuring out software tools that are used by large groups of people, that's what they will use. And so when we think of IT, we don't always equate it to attack surface, but here we go, a clear demonstration that they'll find any surface that you use. So that tech debt of not keeping your tools current and patched, we're seeing it abused. We're absolutely seeing it abused. We also came across the VMware escapes and 0 days and stuff that were being used as well. So I just wanted to bring this up because it seems to happen every year that there's some major software used by thousands of organizations that is centered around being abused by ransomware operators. So it's back to that kind of house cleaning of know your software and have it patched, right? It keeps hammering on it.
Yeah, and patching is one of those unsexy absolute necessities that you have to be as good as you can be at it all the time.
No one treats the backup team nicely until the day they need them. And that's kind of patching. Like, no one treats them nicely or respects it until the day you have to. And then all of a sudden, all your investment either pays off or is noticeable.
So. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the tech debt piece of it, because what's the biggest reason that you don't patch a vulnerability? It's because there's some dependency that is keeping you from doing that, whether it be an kind of an outdated OS, or it's just sort of a lightly used machine, but it's on the network, things like that. Like kind of those, not shadow IT, but sort of that like very fringe or special case kind of piece where it absolutely just exists and persists longer than it probably should be, as some special case.
So that's why I picked that one. And then just kind of rounding out the list, I just gave kind of a drop of company data breaches. I mean, we saw, I think 23andMe had a data breach, which was potentially DNA data. We have MailChimp. We have Yum Brands. So that's KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell, I believe, are all under Yum. And so the reason I wanted just that list is to highlight these are people that pass audits and pass regulatory bodies. So they, like Yum Brands, they process credit cards. They've cleared PCI. As much as we can say that they're still accepting credit cards, so there's some deal they have where they're approved. But my only point on this is many companies who are compliant are now learning the hard lesson that compliance does not mean secure. And so we've it's kind of been tongue in cheek in our industry for a long time, but now I think we're starting to see the business understand that these are not the same thing. They're not equivalents that you can say, well, we passed NIST, so that means we're not going to get hit by ransomware. Like, they're not equivalents.
Yeah, and that kind of pulls a contrarian thread too, because in the EU, we've seen massive uptick in regulation and kind of the iron fist approach to, well, you're going to be more secure or else kind of thing, coming down from the governments and the organizations. But that only goes so far. And I guess there's this, and they're all punch lists. It doesn't matter what standard you're looking at or what even like set of laws, like here's the things that you have to do to comply.
There's businesses that literally make their money by translating, well, if you do this one thing, here's the requirement on each of these audits, like Rosetta Stones. Like that's literally an industry. Listen, I only want to answer one questionnaire. Help me apply it to all of these regulatory frameworks. That's like the fact that that's a business just tells you, wow, this is some cumbersome stuff. It's not dialed in. It's not consistent. It's just behind.
Yeah. And it's essentially a one size fits all approach, right? It is. It might be adjusted for size of company, or we see a lot of these come through specific industries. And that's where we get into this kind of this cross-pollination of, all right, well, these three standards I want to meet because I need to, because my customers are requiring me to. But they kind of come from two or three different flavors of industry or regulatory body.
Exactly. So I just wanted to, again, looking for a theme that we can pull forward here, which is compliance is not secure. So just kind of, and kind of like here, armchair quarterback, right? That Monday quarterback of what do I see when I read these articles? I see a breakdown in the basics. So with Move It, it's software inventory and patching. When we talk about MGM and Okta and social engineering, it's a breakdown in your detection and response potentially. Like it's just these core capabilities that we see. When you master the core ones, the rest of the stuff gets a lot easier to do. But if you don't master these core capabilities, the rest of it is just window dressing. That's great. You have a threat intel team. That's wonderful. But if you don't know what's present on your network, that's not going to help. It's just a checkbox or window dressing. It's not actually protecting your company yet.
So let's shift a little bit and look forward at 2024. There's always, again, like this is the not obligatory, but this is this is one of dozens or hundreds or thousands of conversations coming in this year about
if you don't have 2024 predictions in your inbox yet, you're not trying.
So what are we kind of hearing from? Obviously, like the hot topic is AI, and it's eclipsed all of the previous year's hot topics like zero trust, automation, things like that.
Blockchain.
Blockchain. So what are kind of some themes that you've been hearing and reading over the past couple of months about where people are looking for relief, I guess, in 2024, or at least like some kind of weapons of success?
So this is my prediction of other people's predictions. and the reason why is I think we'll pull this all together, but I think what you're going to hear is attackers are becoming more advanced, and specifically it's going to be focused on ransomware or nation states. So again, election year, everyone talks about interference. That could be attacks on utilities, that could be disinformation or misinformation online. So you're going to see like YouTube content and stuff like that being altered. But I think what they're going to say in general is that security attacks are becoming more advanced. Is that true? Is that not true? but I think that verbiage is going to be used to weaponize a little bit of fear for sure.
What do you think advanced means? Is it faster or less detectable, or probably both, right?
I think advanced, well, I think it depends on who you talk to. Some people think it's technically advanced, like they're very capable people. Like they know how to do things on a computer that other people don't. Uh, Fine. So technically advanced. I actually think what they're going to say is advanced about it is almost they think each one's a black swan event. Like I never would have thought of that. Or right, it's almost like they attribute the word advanced to anyone who sees something that they don't. And so it's less about like technical capability and more about how effective are you at executing what you need. And I think the cyber crime gangs have absolutely, they don't care. Like their ego is tied up in the money, not in how clever something is. They've broken free of the how to be clever and are in the how to make money. And so that's great. I think that's personally great because if you can hook their motivation to this is what gets us money, you can start removing novel from your vernacular, like, oh, this is super novel or this is 20 things stringed together. Odds are they're not going to do stuff like that. They're going to do what makes them money and is easy.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. And another article that I flagged for this discussion was another Splunk article published back in October, but it's kind of a bunch of different interviews and quotes of C-level security leaders talking about what they see coming in 2024. And let's see, this is from David Marshall, who is, I think he is a security leader at a government organization in the UK. And he said, I don't think there's going to be a massive change in the way cyber attacks are carried out because those conducting the cyber attacks, whether it's criminals or nation states, have a business model that's working pretty well. So why would they change what they're doing?
Exactly. Because in their world, it's not broken yet. There hasn't been a devastating blow to the way they operate yet.
They still have good margin, good ROI.
Yep. So I just think that's going to be, I think that's going to be a thread pulled at to try to convince you to make decisions.
And all right, let's give a 30-second airspace to AI, since it's what everyone is kind of risen to the top.
Oh man. So here, the themes we're seeing is it's being used to propagate fear of AI-driven attacks, but it's at the same time being wielded as the magic silver bullet for security problems. And I have not heard people be able to articulate on either side what that scariness is. So like, or what that, I haven't seen anyone articulate how it will make such a significant impact. I think, yeah, we'll see some stuff evolve, but honestly, rather than try to predict what this outcome will be, I'd rather just get ready for a left or a right. Like it doesn't, I'd rather get my house in order knowing a storm's coming, not, well, it's lightning versus rain versus, like, if you're going to try to predict that far out of a weather pattern, you're going to be wrong. Either you're wrong in the velocity of it or you're wrong in the direction of it or both.
Right.
But why? So I think we're going to see this shake out. You remember the crypto craze, the blockchain phase, like we've seen these crazes happen. And does this feel different? Yeah, it feels a little different, but I think people are still struggling with the like actually putting it into a product of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, all not always talk about on the podcast, but I think most of what we talk about in this podcast is implementation and execution. And it's all of a sudden this new potential capability that is almost instantly escalated into an arms race. And that's, I think,
and I don't know what the arms are that we're racing to collect. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if it's the number of data points or decision points in a model. I don't know if it's the data it's trained on. I don't know if it's the accuracy. And here we're already seeing, what do they call it? Hallucinations within the AI, where it starts inventing things. So I think we're still trying to figure out what this thing is. It's like we found a sharp rock, but we don't know how that's useful yet. And so we just keep banging it against stuff until, oh, shoot, this thing's sharp. It can cut. Let's use it for that. I think we're still just walking around banging it on things.
Yeah.
But
and that
you'll for sure get marketing material with AI either as a threat or a salvation in it. And maybe both at the same time in the same email.
Yeah. So in that same article that I quoted the last one from, there's a quote at the very end, and it's from Randy Harold, who's the CISO of the Manpower Group, which is a massive global staffing company. And his summation of what's going to change in 2024 is, quote, "The threats and problems that we've had for 20 years or 20 years ago are the same as they are today. They might be in a different order. We might call them something slightly different, but they're all the same. And they're the same because they're all based on people. People and culture don't change that much over a 20-year period. Challenges that people are raising with AI or the skill shortage are cyclical problems. We've had them all before."
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that's why the vendor marketing changes faster than corporate customers or security organizations. Their rate of adoption, their rate of change is just slower. And I think that's good. It helps stabilize it to some degree.
And that's a quote that kind of leads into one of our overarching theses, or even like I would say first principles, is and what you just mentioned before, like it's a process, an execution solution as much as it is anything else. In fact, in the previous episodes, the last few, we've really been focusing on, all right, how do we level up? How do we align these different groups? How do we align technologies? How do we align data? How do we make this more not impactful, not effective, but just smarter? Because it's right, it's all there. It's just kind of like
get that momentum, get the wins up on the board.
Yeah. And so here's the transition from the third act to hopefully give you some little hope kind of going forward in 2024. And we've been fortunate to see and experience some success stories when it comes to potential breaches. And just wanted to kind of highlight one of them on this episode. And Stuart, can you kind of walk us through a bright spot?
Sure. So age-old question. It was a critical vulnerability that was being exploited in the wild. That was new. Was it technically a 0-day? I don't know, but it definitely was a very recent patch that was released, and the customer, it was a vulnerability that then resulted in some compromised accounts on their network. No different than what we've seen other people hit by, no different than the ransomware stuff that you were mentioning. The difference maker was they were so sensitive to what was happening and could quickly triage it and respond to it. And all of this was because they put in an effort to integrate their tool set, their viewing, as well as integrate the teams So now all of a sudden the different functions were talking to each other quickly and efficiently. And that change in their capability was the difference maker. We had the leader reach out to us and talk to us and said, look, this was the difference maker, because we saw one of these things 9 months before where we didn't have this experience and this tooling, and it took forever to recover. It went from days down to hours, which the minute something goes boom on your network, you're on a clock, and time matters. So you can't really put something new in or train on a new process in the midst of the firefight.
Time and information. And I mean, that's really because it takes different data sets, it takes different tools, because all of this. I mean, we talked about the kind of 5 main categories of data, but it's all lives in your environment, at the same time, and actors are moving across them. So to make this thorough and rapid response really requires layering several of these data sets and tools together and presenting them in one complete picture so the team can act. And that I think was probably the biggest difference maker in this situation, because previously they didn't have that that instant correlation, if you will.
And by having that integrated tool, it then integrates the discussion between engineers and analysts and leadership. It allows you to visually show what's going on. It allows more accurate information to be told to leadership in the midst of a crisis. All of this stuff, it adds up, and it adds up quickly. And the thing I love about this example is it goes back to Randy's quote in saying they addressed something that was a problem regardless of the tool they bought. It was the people and the culture and this integrating of the groups and disciplines that made the difference. They used technology, but for a means. Technology was not the end, it was the means. And so the end goal was our teams need to be more capable. Done.
I mean, I go back of 11% in the ransomware survey, 11% that defeated the ransomware attack, if you will.
Solved it themselves
with process and procedure and execution. And I mean, we've seen it be completely possible. We've seen it executed by small teams, relatively small teams. And I mean, I think one of the big goals of 2024 should be let's run that 11% up to some crazy high number.
And I think everyone listening to this is like, oh, that's great for your customers or people who could afford you. First of all, afford, like we do business with groups that are probably smaller than the one you're sitting in. It's not about that. It's about do you want to approach the situation differently? And what I say by that is you probably have stuff that's holding you back that you can say, yep. So it could be a lack of resources or staff. It could be a laundry list of projects that aren't going anywhere. It could be a wish list of technologies you want to buy that you haven't been approved for. There's lots of things that you can say, I would be better if it wasn't for X, Y, or Z. The difference that we see in these groups that make this transition is they start with what do I have? And they start exploiting the value of what they have. Just stop, take inventory of what you have. Hey, I don't have 15 rock star security people. Fine. Do you have a hungry junior who's willing to read and learn and try and experiment? Good. Like that's what you need. That's valuable. Or like how to take advantage of the technologies you have, right? It's all about that kind of stopping, changing up your view of what's going on and make a different plan. If I read the 2023 list in 2024 and what'll be 2025, it's the reason it's the same is because we keep approaching it the same way. we keep trying to buy our way out of this, and it's not. You got to do the work.
Yeah, and again, like we've been inside of and seen inside of so many different companies, different industries, different sizes, different kind of org structures, from global conglomerates, to small groups in a medium-sized company. And
Here, we've dealt with customers who have over 100 million in a security budget, and companies that have under $1 million in a security budget, including staff and everything. We've seen it all, and the difference maker is not budget or headcount.
yeah, and that's it should be an encouraging thing, because we've seen very few companies that have lacked a key fundamental element in what we've seen be successful. So, I mean, so here we go. Let's go to our big, bold, probably the unsexiest claim of 2024 that you're going to hear from anybody. And Stuart, I mean, you mentioned it, Stuart, and what we're going to run our 2024 on, and what we're going to focus on, and what we say and what we do and how we work with people is really this. So what's holding you back from achieving your vision of security is not what you don't have. Stuart, you mentioned lack of talent or resources, projects you haven't finished or even started yet, backlogs, even the technology wish list. None of this is actually what's holding you back. What is holding you back is how you are using what you have inside of your company right now, inside of your organization. And I think, that's something we've always believed. But I think we've done a pretty thorough job of kind of proving that over 2023, as wrapped up in that last anecdote story that we told. And it's hopefully, saying it is one thing, doing it is another, of course, but at a minimum, I think we wanted to have everyone listening today to come away with that nugget of hope, if you will.
And that it's yours to foster. You're going to have to take that little spark, that little ember, and grow it into the fire of your group. That, an outside entity is not going to do that, because for everything they give, they have to take. So it's one of these that you have to make the decision. Yes, we're going to invest in our team. We're going to expand how we use things, and we're going to find a new way.
Yeah. And you mentioned it before, or we kind of touched on it when we talked about the compliance piece. So compliance is a one size fits all. It's a checklist, and a lot of products are like that, right? A lot of products, a lot of technologies only deploy and implement it as far as they know, right? And that's whoever built it, whoever provides it. I mean, they make all these claims about it'll do this, and that, but what your responsibility is in your organization is to take it all the way, to make it work for your organization, your data, your people, all of those things. So you're basically not customizing it, but you're dialing it in to not
optimizing it.
Yeah, not only to what your company needs, but also to your individual vision of security. How should security be executed inside of your group? And it's an opportunity for technologists, opportunity for kind of mid-level leaders, all of you that are doing the work day to day, week to week, to try to execute to keep the organization. It's your opportunity to kind of level up, and the payoff. And what you mentioned about the leader attached to that story is they were able to take this evidence of their successful response, capabilities that they weren't able to exercise prior to it, and take it up to leadership and say, hey, look at how this works and how we worked. We need more of this because it's good and it's effective.
And they got support for more innovative efforts that were on their wish list, because the leadership said, listen, if you're already getting this much value from what we've given you, go do more. Like that, you have to turn that tide. You have to put some wins up, and then it starts falling into place. But yeah, you got to take a position, got to start stacking wins, got to start pushing to get more out of what you have. But I'm excited because what we've been running into is a far more educated customer population than I ever saw prior. Like people, the questions, the asks, the requests, the ideas that they're coming with, they're amazing. They surprise me every day with just how innovative some of these asks are.
That's a great observation, and something I hadn't really appreciated before. I mean, I've seen it and I agree with that. But I mean, just as we spend this time aligning these tools to the organization, it's also an alignment of the talent you have to the tools and I mean, a successful process is maximizing or getting the most out of your talent as it applies to the tools and technology investments you've made. So like that's a key piece of success. And so if you believe this, right, like if you buy into the idea that you can start now, you can do some work and investment and time in dialing in your tools and adding process to that, you're gonna level up your own talent and the talent of your team without really changing them. You're really just kind of connecting and aligning, but they're producing more, and not just producing more, but they have a method to take their ideas and their talent and apply it in a scalable way to securing the organization, which is super empowering from a personal level. And we've seen that.
And we've seen that. So I think the difference maker in most security programs is the creativity and the ability to execute on that creativity of the security team. Done. Like that's where it is. So what stifles that? Well, what I've seen, most of the creativity comes in the moments of silence in between the rushed work. So if you have like a backlog of to-dos or projects or stand-up meetings that you have to report on a status to, that interrupts that chance to be creative. And so what happens is they get stuck on that hamster wheel of tasks in, tasks out, and you're not seeing that growth. You're not seeing that investment. But what happens that we've seen firsthand is the minute you break that wheel, where the ins just get processed into the outs, as soon as you add a break in there and you let them come back to being a human, that's where really interesting things and unpredictable things happen that will benefit the program. It's that moment where they can just kind of sit and think that you can see some really interesting stuff come out. And we've been able to see it just even on 3-week engagements.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll kind of wrap.
It'll be a good year.
Yeah, and to sort of summarize our big unsexy claim of 2024, as well as set the table for what we're going to spend our time thinking about, talking about, again, working with people on, is this first principle that what's holding you back, what's holding your security team back from achieving vision of security is not what you don't have. What's holding you back is how you use what you have. And this year for Outpost and this podcast and Stuart and I, We think the way to overcome that, or the way to solve that, is, first of all, take what you have and get it as close to 100% as you can. Not perfect, but make sure you've got it as connected and dialed in as you can, given your realities and your context. And when you do that successfully, and if you can do it quickly, you're going to create some really compelling evidence that you can take to whoever your leader is and say, hey, I get it. We know the way. Here's an example of that. We need to go more in this direction. So that's, I mean, we've had some conversations on this already, and we've got some things in our queue, in our pipe, and we're going to unpack a lot of those things more specifically, because, taking what you have and getting it to 100% is not an easy or overnight thing. But hopefully we can explore and unpack some I don't know, switch playbooks to get you there. So,
and I'm super excited for people to start being hungry to take back their outcomes. So rather than, listen, you know what, that's just what they offer, so that's what we get. No, own your own outcomes. And I'm really excited that I'm starting to see this bubble up in the different groups that we work with, where they're not interested in being the norm. They're interested in owning their own fate and starting to have a vote in what happens. And I love that. Like that's what makes this super rewarding, working with different companies, is watching that shift. So yeah, I'm super excited.
Seeing the evidence of success, and that's when it becomes contagious. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll wrap this episode. As always, we appreciate you listening, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Outpost RBA podcast. Stuart McIntosh has over 20 years of experience building and maturing security programs inside Fortune 500 companies. In 2018, he gave a talk at Splunks.conf titled "Say Goodbye to Your Big Alert Pipeline and Say Hello to Your New Risk-Based Approach," which started the rise of RBA. As the creator and architect of risk-based alerting, he pioneers security methodologies at Outpost Security, which he co-founded with Will. Will Robus has spent the last 20 years in the operations or financial C-suites at technology and security companies, focused on what drives results and successful scaling. At Outpost Security, he works with CISOs to imagine a more expansive future for their SOC, once it has a solid RBA foundation. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Share it with your security team and CISO. Connect with us on LinkedIn and contact us at outpost-security.com to lift your team out of the fog of alert confusion with RBA 0 to 1.